And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. Next to me, as always, is my beautiful co-host Laraib. As we are here to fully break down this upcoming NFL season. We are filming this on Labor Day, September 1st, which means the NFL season starts this upcoming week, Laraib. On this Thursday, we kick off the NFL season. Cowboys at the Eagles, and we are so excited. It's been a long off season. We did a quick kind of intro recap storylines episode earlier past few weeks, but this is our full official NFL predictions episode. We're going division by division, telling you who's making the playoffs, who's missing, who's going to win the Super Bowl, MVP, and a ton of interesting betting stuff, really cool NFL angles, and a lot of stuff to get into today, Laura.
Yeah, this is not typically the most analytical thing that we do all season long, kind
No.
of just throwing our cards on the table, letting our nuts hang, you could say, about some things. And I think that's what we're going to be doing here today. We also have a couple betting things for you guys. I have three little trinkets for you guys at the end of the episode. So make sure you stay tuned for that, Lewis. But without further ado, I think let's go ahead and kick it off with the AFC North. A division who had two teams make the playoffs last year, in the Ravens and the Steelers. But this season, you have a team like the Browns, and they're kind of projected to win less than 3 games this year. The Steelers with Aaron Rodgers in at quarterback, the Bengals, who this Trey Hendrickson thing looming over them all season long. And then you have the Baltimore Ravens, who just keep on figuring out a way to get better and better each offseason. They sign Jair Alexander. They draft your man, MG, Mike Green from Marshall. And it looks like they've constructed the best, if not the second best roster in the NFL. And so for my rankings, I have the Ravens 1, the Bengals 2, the Steelers 3, and the Browns 4. I don't think we're going to disagree on that much, but I think we will disagree on who's making the playoffs.
Yes, I have a weird way, and you know how I do this, but I want to let the audience in on when I'm going through, and this doesn't totally influence my decision, but it's a kind of a good groundwork for like, how do I see the season playing out? So I have this massive grid of every team's full schedule kind of like stacked on top of each other. And I just go through win, loss, win, loss, win, loss for every team. And I kind of make sure it balances out, right? If I have the Cardinals beating the Seahawks in week 9, I give that a win for the Cardinals. And then when I get to the Seahawks with that week 9, I'll put a loss, just for an example. But when I go through this, it kind of illuminates certain things like, wow, like this team, their schedule, and I'm not looking super deep like into, where like what time of the week is it a Thursday? Is it a Monday? What time in the schedule is it? Is it a back to back? Or not back to back, but like, what is it coming off a bye? I mainly look at home or away, who the two teams are, and what point in the schedule they playing, right? And that's kind of more niche for a few teams. Like if you're playing the Packers at Green Bay in December, that's going to be a tougher game than playing them in September, obviously. And, the inverse for the Dolphins, right? So that's just how I approach this. So when I'm going through the AFC North, I do agree. I do have the Browns last. I just think quarterback situations in shambles. They do have some talent, but in the NFL, it's just way too competitive that ultimately a team is going to get dropped off and they don't have the quarterbacks to compete. Steelers finishing third, just another middling year for the Steelers. They think they probably have the best quarterback option that they've had in a few years, but at this point, Aaron Rodgers, the oldest player in the league, and not exactly the paragon of hard
I
work.
just don't think he wants to get hit anymore, Lewis.
Oh, really? You don't think he wants to get hit anymore? Bold take.
Yeah.
So I do have the Steelers third. I have the Bengals second in the division. A lot of question marks on the defensive end, but you still have Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, T. Higgins. I like what they did. Um, I'm more bullish on this offensive line, this running game than most. So I think offensively they'll be pretty dynamic. Um, Big year for Zach Taylor. And then I agree with you. I think the Ravens are probably the most talented team in football. It's either them or the Eagles, just top to bottom. And then you have a dynamic quarterback at the top who has a lot to prove this year. So I have two teams making the playoffs from this division, Laraab. I do have the Ravens obviously winning the division, and I have the Bengals in as a wild card.
And I'm saying it is only going to be the Baltimore Ravens who make the playoffs. I know a little bold, especially how close the Bengals were last season. You imagine if they could just eke out one or two more wins, if a couple more balls rolled their way. But when I just look at the rest of this AFC division, there's just too many teams who I feel like have a more complete roster than the Bengals, and so I think they miss the playoffs for the second year in a row.
I definitely see that, and they definitely have big talent question marks. I really obviously I like that the fact that Trey Hendrickson will be fully ready to go this year, and they're all entering training camp relatively healthy, unlike the past few seasons. Joe Burrow looked sharp in the preseason. I just think they're taking this year like they're starting off super seriously, super locked in approach that they can afford later on to have like these tough games that always kill them. I think they're going to be well prepared. And if not, there's going to be a lot of seats open this offseason. So I do have optimism for the Bayou Bengals. But let's move on now to the AFC East, Laraib. Starting off, I like to go bottom to the top. So I have the Jets finishing at the bottom. Um, I like Aaron Glenn. I think he'll be a good addition. I think this is a good buffer year for the Jets. Not a lot of drama for this team. Just young players, and I think they might surprise a few people just with their effort and intensity that Aaron Glenn will bring. But ultimately, Justin Fields has proven he is not a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. Just cannot, is not the passer that you need him to be to compete in this 2025 NFL. I don't love their offensive skill weapons outside of Garrett Wilson. I mean, there's really not much there at all.
Your
And
man
then the
Breeze.
defensively, they have some talent, but they might. I just feel like they're going to be behind in a lot of games, and that talent won't be able to play at its full potential. Don't even bring up Brees Lightning. I'm not major fade. If he's at, we'll talk about that later. Moving on now, I have the Dolphins finishing not too far ahead of them. Dolphins finishing third. Just really noisy off season. There's always question marks with this team with health concerns. As it stands now, Tua's healthy, but now you have A-Chain dealing with an injury. You have Tyreek Hill dealt with a little bit of a wrist, and he's also just cuckoo. Just I don't know if the relationship between him and Tua is exactly as healthy as you'd like it to be. Jalen Waddle also dealing with things, so it's always something with this Dolphins team. And one of the hottest seats in the NFL belonging to Mike McDaniel. I think this is a potential wild card team in terms of like if they reach their ceiling, they are a good team. Like I like their defensive line. I like, their skill position, their offensive line. Losing Tron Armstead's a big blow, but like they have certain pieces that can work. It's just it never feels like it meshes, and this is going to be a big year for Mike McDaniel, but I don't think it's going to result in any positive wins. Second, I have the New England Patriots, new coach, brand new. Josh McDaniels bringing him back, kind of re-energizing the organization, bring just that classic Patriots Bill Belichick way back into the building. Drake May year two, a lot of high expectations for him. Offense got a little bit of a revamp. Defense looks really good. I have high expectations for them. And then finally, the Buffalo Bills, who've won this division the past 6 years in a row. They look like they are showing no signs of stopping that anytime soon. So, Rob, I have two playoff teams from this division. I have the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots.
Yeah, not much to disagree about here at all with you, Lewis. I have the same order: Jets, Dolphins, Patriots, and Bills. I agree with everything you said, especially for the Jets. I like Aaron Glenn, but it's just going to be tough, like you said, with Justin Fields as your quarterback to compete, especially in and not even in this conference, just in this division alone. When you have the Patriots and the Bills sitting there at the top, then for the Dolphins, if their defensive line can get off to a crazy start, kind of similar to like how you think the Giants can with all the playmakers they have on the defensive line, then you can see them doing something. But again, just too many question marks. When you have more baby mamas and touchdowns, a
Mm,
la Tyreek Hill, it's just hard to root and focus on football, and you have that going on. And then
mm.
for the Patriots, of course, you like what they did on the offseason. All the guys they brought in, Mike Williams on the defensive line. They bring in some guys on the offensive line. They draft Travion Henderson. You draft Pop Douglas. Oh, is it Pop Douglas? Yeah, I think he's a rookie
Two
over
years.
there,
It's
receiver.
his second year, Demario Douglas.
Oh, Demario Douglas second year. They drafted
Yeah.
some receiver who his name is eluding me. And then of course the Bills. They also top tier roster.
Efton Kism.
No, I don't think that's who I was thinking about.
That's
But
the
for
guy.
the
Efton Kiss, I'm sorry.
and then the
Oh,
Bills
really? Okay, well,
with
shoot.
Josh Allen at the top. I also have two teams. I think the Patriots do make it. The Dolphins and the Jets for me were easy cross-offs, but for the Bills, Patriots, I think those two teams go in.
All right, pretty aligned so far. I think we'll be aligned on this division as well. Moving on to the AFC South, Laraib, who do you have at the bottom of this division?
The bottom, I'm going to go with the Titans. It's just historically, we know teams with rookie quarterbacks are going to struggle no matter how well, Cam Ward plays. There's a reason the Titans had the number one overall pick. It's because they have a really bad roster. And Cam Ward, as good as he might be, he's not going to be able to to diminish all that. Plus, the head coach and Brian Callahan is just I didn't see too many great things out of him last year, but he did have Will Levis as his quarterback, so we'll see what he can do. Anything different there this year. For the third team, I have the Colts with Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback. Just a team again, you just kind of don't know what's going on. Anthony Richardson, 23 years old, heading to the bench, heading to a different team potentially this year. Just a weird situation with them. And then second, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars with Liam Cohen as their head coach. It's going to be really fun to see Trevor Lawrence on his second year of his mega extension. This is this is his final straw, if that. I think this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Trevor Lawrence, you know, maybe he's going to a different team at the end of this season. And then the number one team, I think, which might have the number one defense in the NFL, the Houston Texans, in what is going to be probably a really easy division for them to win again this year. The Texans are my only team coming out from the AFC South.
Yeah, I agree with you with that part. I disagree in some of the order. I have the Colts finishing last in this
Hmm.
division. I just, with the shakiness at quarterback, it seems like Shane Steichen's seat is boiling hot right now. It just, you can't figure out the quarterback. And you tried this revolving door of veterans for a while, and then finally it's like, hey, let's take a shot on this project, rookie Anthony Richardson. And clearly they see more of him in the building than, us casual fans do. But the option of going with Daniel Jones and admitting that this project is so far gone that you have to resort to Daniel Jones is just a far cry. And I think this season is just going to be a very long season for Colts fans. I do have the Titans finishing with a respectable record, actually. I really like Cam Ward, I think he has a lot of poise. I think Brian Callahan bringing in his dad, Bo Callahan, very respected offensive line coach throughout the league, and he's transformed a lot of offensive lines, and they bring in a lot of new pieces who have a lot of potential. So I think this offensive line could do well. They can run the ball. Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears. I think they have a good foundation for an offense there. Defensively, I have a lot more question marks. They bring in a lot of old guys last off season, haven't really panned out. I do, you still have like Jeffrey Simmons, but I think the defense is going to be causing some problems. That's why I don't see them taking a CJ Stroud, Jayden Daniels type of rookie jump. But I think Cam Ward makes this team respectable for how bad it was last year with Will Levis as the starting quarterback. Number two, I do have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Also missing the playoffs. I think it'll be close for the Jags. I like a lot of their talent. Like their defensive line for me has a lot of potential. Josh Hines Allen, you have Trayvon Walker in his second year with a lot to prove. But they just don't have that no big nasty. They like defensive tackles, offensive guards like that. What really helps a team win. Um, so I think they could have some big flashy games and very exciting games. And you mentioned Travis Hunter, just an exciting player in general. You'd think they'd have more than two primetime games, but neither here nor there. I can't wait to watch Travis Hunter play football. I just can't wait to see how they scheme him up. But I just need to see, you mentioned this is the year for Trevor Lawrence. He really needs to prove himself. I can't echo that anymore. I mean, it's now or never for Trevor Lawrence. This is the year he needs to make a playoff push. He needs to win a playoff game. Again, we've seen it before. And they put all the chips on the table this year. They traded up to get Travis Hunter. So you only make a move like that if you believe in your quarterback. But if he can't pull it through this year, tough decisions in the future. But I do have the Texans winning this division, like you mentioned. Awesome defense. D'Amico Ryan's probably the best secondary in the entire NFL. Derek Stingley is my favorite cornerback in the entire NFL. Jalen Petrie, just an awesome safety. They just have awesome guys. Kyer Elam, I think, had a good bounce back season for this Texan secondary last year. when versus when he was on the Bills. And I just really like the defensive line. The biggest thing that concerns me is this offensive line. They were just totally fine letting Laramie Tunsil go, knowing they had offensive line problems, which may be a scary thing for the Commanders. We'll get to that later. But just overall question marks. And then, Joe Mixon, what to do with his injury? Are they going to be able to run the ball effectively? It looks like Nick Chubb's their week one starter for the running back. I love Nick Chubb, but I need more assurance at that position. But you bring in Jayden Higgins in the draft. It seems like there's gonna be a lot on CJ Stroud's shoulders again. So I don't love this team, but the division's just so up for grabs that ultimately they are gonna win. Let's move on now to the final AFC division. The AFC West historically dominated by the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's see, Laraib, if you're going with them again.
Yeah, at the bottom I have the Raiders. I think, new head coach, new quarterback, Tom Brady a little bit more involved this year in the draft process and team building aspect. Ashton Genty comes in, of course. Max Crosby gets his big extension early in the offseason. This is a team who you see trending in the right direction. It just sucks that they are in one of the, if not the toughest division currently in the NFL. That's why I have to unfortunately slot them in at the 4 spot. At the number 3 spot, I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos. I know a little shocking, a little surprising. They are, I know a lot of people's darling this year after rookie Bo Nix's outstanding season after the way their defense played last year. But I just think these two other teams, their head coach quarterback combos eke out the Broncos. The number 2 spot, I'm going with the Los Angeles Chargers. As much as I wanted to
Don't do
put the
nothing
Chiefs
stupid.
here, as bad as I wanted to put the Chiefs here at the number 2, I just think the Chargers have a lot. This is last year was the appetizer for this Chargers team. This year, I expect a lot of great things out of them. One of the big things was Harbaugh, being able to draft guys who he saw play in college. Now he got to draft them this past offseason. If they can hit on this draft like I expect them to, a la Amorion Hampton, I expect them to do some good stuff this year. And then, of course, number one team has to be the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, with Travis Kelsey, or Travis Taylor Swift Kelsey.
Hmm.
And
Changes his
then
name.
and of course, Andy Reid at the helm. As much as you can say, oh, Rashi Rice, his suspension's looming, offensive line is question marks here and there. Their defense, Chris Jones is getting so old, Travis Kelsey's so old. It's still Patrick Mahomes, it's still Andy Reid, and they're going to find a way to win this division by hook or by crook. That, and I have 3 teams making the play.
Wow. That's what I figured.
Yeah.
I was doing the math in my head. I'm like, oh, he has to have three here. I think I agree with you. I think this is the best division in football. I actually have all these teams finishing with over a 500 record. Very bullish on this division, but ultimately there has to be a fourth place team, and I agree with you. It is the Raiders. Um, obviously huge improvements at coach, quarterback, running back, bringing in Genty, Gino, Pete Carroll. I just think Pete Carroll really needs to sink his teeth into this defense. I just don't think they have the talent yet to fit the scheme. So it might take them a year or two. They're going to be competitive. They're going to pull off some upsets, this season, and they're going to be a tough out, certainly. But ultimately in this division, Geno Smith, Pete Carroll is a really good quarterback coach combo. If only another team thought about that. Anyway, but I just don't think, you look at the other combos in this division, it's not going to match up. Third place, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. Um, I just I need to see it. I can Justin Herbert win a meaningful game in his entire career? I don't think he has ever. Um, it just with the Rashawn Slater injury really hurts this team's identity of wanting to run the ball, wanting to get the ball out of Justin Herbert's hands, which I understand. You want to get it away from the risk maker. Um, and then I like the idea of Amari and Hampton. I like kind of the identity the team's going for. But last year, they had a lot go their way. They were really good in one score games. Justin Herbert only threw 4 interceptions the entire regular season. He threw 4 in the playoff game. Did you remember that? I do. But I just think this defense was number one scoring defense in the entire NFL. You lose Joey Bosa, who, albeit wasn't too impactful on this defensive line last year. I just think there's a lot of changing parts on this team. I like Harbaugh as much as you do. I just don't believe in Herbert as much as you do, which leads me to my second place team, the Denver Broncos. I think the Broncos ultimately it's this defense that I believe in, and just like there are some concerning things to me, like the fact that last year this team went 1-8 against teams with over 500 records, and Bo Nix didn't look great against top scoring defenses last year. But I just think the confidence that this team has had all offseason long, the way Sean Payton, who doesn't lack confidence, has been speaking about this team all offseason long. I just think they're coming in with a good mindset. They have a really soft start to their schedule, which I think can just build momentum for this team. And this defense against bad quarterbacks is just going to roll. So I really like them. And then finally, Kansas City Chiefs. Enough said. I have two playoff winners or two playoff teams from this division: Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos. Laraib.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I do have the Chiefs, Chargers, and Broncos all making it in. Um, I think the two teams we disagreed on was the Bengals and the Chargers. Those are
Classic.
the two teams. But I just think the Chargers have a better roster, a better head coach, a better no, not a better, barely a little slightly less quarterback. Um, but I know I just think they have a better roster overall, and I don't think we've seen three teams come out of division in a while, but I think this is the year we could see it from the AFC West. The Bengals just really don't impress me. Joe Burrow was the
Well,
best.
last year the AFC West did it. So, I mean, that's a case for you. Um, but it's never really like an apples to apples comparison. If it was just who's the better team, they get in, then we're in college football rankings, right? But this is, based on who these teams are playing. I don't believe in the AFC North at the bottom as much as the AFC West is. AFC West has a really tough schedule this year. And ultimately, as much as I do like the Chargers, they're like, I'll just give this away now. They are my eighth team. I think they're like right there knocking on the door. Ultimately, I just think that the Bengals' schedule favors them more. And even though I do like elements more, I trust Joe Burrow more in some of these bigger situations. But it's close for me. That's just to make it short for you.
I mean, like I was about to say, Joe Burrow was the best quarterback in football last year. His numbers beat out anybody, and the way he played and the way they were struggling to win games, the way they were, scratching and clawing to get their way into the playoffs. I just see that scenario playing out again this year with the, adjustments you could say they made on the defensive side of the ball. And
Hey,
so
Al Golden, new defensive coordinator. Sharp. You
he's
saw
no,
Notre
he's
Dame's defense last night? Hey, they didn't look too sharp without Al Golden.
that is either here nor there, Lewis. Let's go ahead and move into the NFC. Let's start off with the NFC North. I think we both had someone else winning this division up until a few days ago, but I'm going to go ahead and start off with the number 4 spot. I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings. I just can I need to see JJ McCarthy play an NFL game, a football game in the NFL. I'm sorry if that's too much to ask. I'm sorry if this team won 14 games last year with Sam Darnold. I don't care. In this division, I need to see him play. We're going to see him play Monday Night Football against the Bears. That is going to be a huge test for him. But until then, the looming injury concerns with Justin Jefferson with a hamstring, Jordan Addison out for 3 games. Adam Thielen coming in
Fossil.
as your veteran presence in the wide receiver room. I need to see it for me to believe it, team. And then at number 3, I have the Chicago Bears, who had a great offseason, like we've already mentioned. Bring in Ben Johnson, year 2, Caleb Williams, a solid defense from last year. Let's see what they can do. But I just can't in any way put them above these two other teams. At the number 2 spot, I have the Detroit Lions. I'm gonna go
Oh,
ahead and slot them in here. I think losing your offensive coordinator, losing your defensive coordinator is gonna impact them heavily. The way those guys schemed up things, it's not easy to replace, especially Ben Johnson. They still do have all the pieces there. Kirby Joseph, Aiden Hutchinson coming off his injury from last season. You still have Jared Goff, who is serviceable. It can, win you a lot of games. ARSB, Jameson Williams, Jameer Gibbs, they have all the pieces. I just think it's going to take some time for them to adjust missing those coordinators. And that's why I have for my number 1 team, the Green Bay Packers, with Jordan Love after, dealing with a bunch of injuries last year after that week 1 game in Brazil. I think he's going to be fully healthy this year. They bring in Matthew Golden. Our guy Jayden Reed, a little banged up in his foot, but I think they still have a slew of wide receiver threes on their roster that they can throw to. Of course,
Twix.
my guy Josh Jacobs, and then the big elephant in the room, Micah Parsons, the game wrecker himself, at only 26 years old, gets to move into the NFC North and now take over. I think the Cheeseheads will win this division.
Yeah, I like it. I agree with you for most of it, but we'll let me start at the bottom. I agree with you here. Minnesota. I mean,
Oh, okay. I thought
Min
we
Min
might have disagreed on that.
no, Minnesota fans have been rabid all off season long. Oh, I thought y'all hated Sam Darnold. All of a sudden we lose him and we lose seven more games. It's not apples to apples. Like last year you played a cupcake schedule and you were 10-1 in one score games. There's regression to the mean, Vikings fans, and I agree with you. JJ McCarthy, I need to see it. I was a huge skeptic of him in college. He played in a very run heavy scheme with Michigan where they were able just to pound the ball down people's throats. I don't love Aaron Jones. I don't love Jordan Mason as running back options. You mentioned the shakiness in the receiver room. Defensively, I think they're going to be a really good defensive team, but a lot of those great defensive metrics last year came from playing bad quarterbacks in games they were, in the lead, so they could just tee off and go off for crazy sacks. But I just don't think that's going to be the reality this year. I think 7 wins, which is what I project them to get to. I think that'll be a good year one. JJ McCarthy kind of figure things out. I'm not saying he can't have a promising future. This is going to be a tough year for Vikings fans. Just saying that right now. Third place, I do have the Chicago Bears. I'm a big Caleb guy. That took a little hit last year, but I still do think he will have a productive season. They just have a brutal schedule as well. I like Ben Johnson coming in, kind of revitalizing the offense. I like a lot of their defensive talent. I think Dennis Allen, as much as I gave him hell last year, I think he is a good defensive coach. So they have the stuff there, but as this is just such a tough division that I cannot put them, vault them over these top two teams. At number two, I have the Green Bay Packers. I ultimately, and we'll talk about this when we do our week one predictions episode. It honestly comes down to week one for me, which is crazy because this week one, Lions are playing at Green Bay, and I don't know what person's role is going to be in that first game, but whoever can take that game will have a huge just lead for me in the division race. I still do believe both these teams are playoff teams this year. But I just trust the Lions' talent overall more than the Packers' talent, which, Micah's, it's easy to fit in an edge rusher, but you still got to figure out the scheme. Um, and there's, changes on the offensive line. Eldon Jenkins going from left guard to center, some shuffling around over there that might take some time to really get into. But I think it's going to be a big year for Jordan Love and this offense as well. I think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. And Jordan Love, if he has a fully healthy season, I think we can get the full Toyotathon Jordan Love for an entire season. And then ultimately, Lions number one. I just think they've gotten to a point now where yes, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn were very good coordinators, but I think Dan Campbell just raises the floor of a team to want to compete, want to play hard every single week, that they're not going to lose that winning edge that makes them this just staple playoff team. Jared Goff's a solid quarterback. How will he respond from that disastrous playoff game? We'll see. But ultimately, I trust him enough to win this division. And like I mentioned, two playoff teams from this division. Now, moving on to the NFC East, Laraib. The defending champion Eagles, hailing from this division. Will they repeat? Who knows? Who do you have at number four?
At the number four spot, I'm going with the New York Giants.
Yep.
Um, I think we can both agree we like their defense. Just the havoc they're going to cause from that defensive line is going to be insane this year. But then you look at their options at quarterback, and it just doesn't give you too much hope with Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Jackson Dart, who, had a good preseason, but
A
it's a little different when you're
little
when you're
different.
playing football. And so you got to throw them in at four. Number three, I got to go with the Dallas Cowboys. A lot bleaker of an outlook than I might have predicted if they still had Micah Parsons, but now they realistically just turn into the Bengals, but just the NFC version. Dak Prescott, he's going to throw for a bunch of yards. They have two, alpha receivers. A little questionable at the running back position, but defensively, it's Deron Bland and it's
Oof.
Travion Diggs and it's
Shout out Duran Bland.
and then,
Extension.
it's a bunch of no one else's. It's just going to be tough to watch this team. You and I both watched this Cowboys doc, and we were kind of documentary about, how Jerry Jones transformed this team in the 90s and how, it kind of showed me Jerry Jones in a little bit of different light. Like, okay, you know what? I can kind of see where he's coming from. And now after this trade, after the past 25 years, now I understand why everyone's so mad at the Cowboys all the time because they used to be this dynasty. They used to be so great. The star meant something, but now it means nothing to me and to anyone my age. And that's why I have the Cowboys at 3. At 2, give me the Commanders. I really didn't want to put them here. I really think they're going to step back from what they did last year. Their defense really does not impress me at all. Once again, it's going to be a lot on Jayden Daniels to win those one score games, to come back from behind, to throw a couple of those Hail Marys into the end zone. But I just think they're just way better than this Cowboys team with Brian Schottenheimer as their head coach. I think Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels will be second. And then number one, of course, the best or if second best roster in the NFL, the Eagles. They lose a couple guys. They lose Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator, but still best offensive line in the NFL, best running back in the NFL,
You name it.
and
Yeah, keep going. You want to
any
keep
pushback
going?
at best receiving core in the NFL, best secondary in the
You said this
NFL.
quarterback? Wait, hold up. That's where I'll stop you. I was in my
Uh,
mind, like, I guess Saquon is. Wait, what?
no, I mean just the way they've constructed this roster.
Yeah,
I think that it's easily they win this
Darth
division.
Howie. He's a genius. I give him that. All right. Well, I'll go my NFC East at the bottom. We agree. Giants. I like their defensive line. Don't really love anything else. I love Malik
Hey,
Neighbors. I think he's a
shout out
talent.
Leak.
Shout out Leak. Um, but all this Jackson Dart hype is making me sick to my stomach. I watched this guy in college. I've been wrong about quarterbacks before. Okay, we'll see what happens with Caleb this season. But I don't see it at all. I've seen quarterbacks have awesome preseasons, and it's like, oh my gosh. But no, I have no faith in this offense, and ultimately they're going to finish fourth. I do have the Dallas Cowboys at third. I think they're going to be a little more competitive than you might give them credit for, because there were some things with Micah Parsons in the locker room. People didn't like the podcast. Kenny Clark's been this consummate pro. I think he gives them a little bit of a different look, but that defense is still hot garbage throughout that. I don't think it's gonna make much of a difference. I like the Bengals parallel there, except they're just a step down almost at each and every level from the Bengals across the board. And you're not high on the Bengals. So, and then at number 2, Commanders. I just think I'm higher on them than you just because I think that highly of Jayden Daniels. I think he's the type of quarterback that can really carry a team to just consistent playoff success. He can be the engine for just a constant playoff team, the way we see a Lamar, a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. I'll give that one to you. But I just think he can just give you that consistent, steady offense that just breeds confidence throughout the whole team, including the defense, because the defense is better than last year. It's not worse.
Well, St.
And they
Jude's
all
definitely left the building,
he's
so
gone. He's out of here.
no addition
And
by
then
subtraction.
Right. And then you bring in, Devo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil, older, just veteran guys. And we saw a lot of those guys come to the team last year and kind of revive their careers. So I just think Jayden brings a certain life to this organization that gives confidence to all these players that I think they will tip my cap. They will be a playoff team this year. And then ultimately we agree Eagles will win the division. Super talented team. I think it's going to be harder this year. I don't think they're going to run the ball at the same success rate that they had last year. It's just a lot of hits on Saquon and Jalen Hurts over that long season going into this year. I think they'll start hot, but maybe, probably peel back a little bit towards the middle of the season, try to, give Will Shipley, those guys, some more carries just so they can say, I think they'll still be a really good team, but they might have tougher games this year, maybe need to throw the ball a little bit more. And the defense, you lose a lot of depth on the defensive line, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, who were big contributors last year, Darius Slay on the back end, but they just keep drafting guys, bringing in guys. So I think they will be set at the top of the NFC East.
All right, let's move on to your division, the NFC South. Um, a lot of people predict this to be the worst division in the
I
NFL.
disagree, but
And I'm gonna go ahead and start us off with the number four spot being the New Orleans Saints. I mean, the
what?
team, they might have the bleakest outlook in the NFL next to, maybe even worse than the Cleveland Browns, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
It's, you bring in Shuck, and somehow this guy's not able to beat out Spencer Rattler in training camp, which is an achievement in its own right. And then Kellen Moore, what can he do to help either of these young quarterbacks in this Saints team? Now, the one bright outlook is a lot of your defense was banged up last year. You can be healthy coming into this season. Um, and you do play in a division that isn't that strong. And so there are ways for the Saints team to maybe
5 wins.
win 4 or 5 games, not 6 or 7, maybe 4 or 5. But still, you gotta put them at four. At the three spot, I have to go with the Carolina Panthers. I'm excited for what this team and the next team can do offensively this year. I liked what I saw out of Bryce Young to finish the season ever since he took over Andy Dalton's spot about halfway through the season. You bring in Ted McMillan at the receiver spot. I see ways for I see ways for this team to be effective offensively with Dave Canales in year two, but it's just going to be tough with the way their defense is. At the number two spot, I'm going with the Atlanta Falcons. I like Michael Penix. There, I said it. I know
Damn.
a
Okay.
lot of people are like, oh, he threw so many picks. You couldn't beat out Kirk Cousins last year. He's this and that. I really like Michael Penix. My eye test with him, he's really been passing that for me. When I think back to his game last year against the Commanders where they went into overtime, that was, a premier performance from him. And then even in their final game against the Panthers where there was, a shootout back and forth, I really like that. And so defense is going to be the big question for me. They lost Matthew Judon, but they did draft two young edge rushers in this past offseason. If they can, either one of those guys can take a step in the right direction, I can see this Falcons team making some noise. And then, of course, the number one team has to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last year, we were kind of low on them because, we just didn't know how this Baker Mayfield experiment was going to work out. But he's really solidified himself as a top 10 guy in the NFL. They keep on getting deeper and deeper at the wide receiver position. And as much as I like to say, oh yeah, their defense is going to fall off this year. Levante David, he's 100 years old. The muscles are starting to fall off the bone over there. No, he just keeps on playing football. And so his Bucks team, I think they have what should be an easy victory here in the NFC South.
Yeah, we're gonna agree on this one, Laraib. I have the Saints at fourth. Not much needs to be said there. They are a dumpster fire. I will say I like the decision to start with Rattler. I've thought about it for a bit. Because ultimately start with the guy who's the experience. You're not expecting much unless Shuck was just blowing you away in camp. You got to start the better guy. But it'd be hard to start with Shuck and switch to Rattler versus starting with Rattler and switching to Shuck because ultimately there will be a switch. Both these guys will start games for the Saints probably due to performance. So not a ton of optimism there. I just want to see what I want to see is how this young offensive line plays this year, and I want to see Kellen Moore. How is he as a coach? Is he composed? Is he scheming up the right things? Is he putting guys in positions to win? So when we get more talent in the future, we can see him as the leader of this team. Carolina Panthers at three. I'm not excited for them. I think this defense is garbage. Derek Brown comes back. But J.C. Horn always kind of banged up in the back end. Besides that, not much talent. They just got rid of Frankie Louvi for some reason, our guy, and now he's balling out in the Commanders. That will still never make sense to me. Um, but just don't really love the middle of this defense. I do like their offensive line. Um, I think they could run the ball effectively well, but I'd still like Bryce Young had a few like you got him, buddy games at the end of the season last year that made some people a little more optimistic about him. I'm still not going there. I need to see him win a big game or play well consistently over the course of a season. Um, Atlanta Falcons at two. I'm a little lower on Penix than you are. It's kind of the same thing. It's just when he did play, just super gunslinger, which great for fantasy owners, right? Just letting it rip. Um, but I just think that he what I will say about this team is Penix has dealt with injury concerns, but a lot of optimism from training camp about Kirk Cousins. So if Kirk Cousins, 2 years removed from the Achilles, which a lot of people kind of say is like when they start to feel like themselves again, he could come back and be a viable quarterback.
So this
The
is gonna be a big year
defense,
for Aaron Rodgers, you're saying?
no, not at all. Yeah, it's 45. Well, getting off track. Hell no to Aaron Rodgers. Um, but I just think the defense will be improved. I still like what Raheem Morris is building over there, kind of an Eagles type of depth at that defensive end position. Because that's really where this Falcons team has struggled basically my entire life watching them, is they can never figure out just that solid edge player for them. And maybe, they took two shots out of the guy out of Georgia, James Pierce out of Tennessee. Maybe they can provide some juice off the edge. And then finally, Tampa at one. You kind of alluded to it. The defense just gets older and you have question marks. But I just think, Todd Bowles doesn't get nearly enough credit as he should as a coach because he's not this sexy, young, offensive mind who's leading the league, but he just consistently turns out really productive defenses. He has his guys in place. And ultimately, I don't love their pass rush, but really good run defense they've had the past few years, which has kind of kept them at this floor of a defense where they were always just solid. And then offensively, Baker Mayfield moved me last year. I just think he's a solid starting quarterback, top 10 level quarterback. And the way this season turns out, I think he could really move some people. But I'll get to that later. I agree with you. The Bucks are my only playoff team from this division. And then finally, did you say the Falcons were a playoff team or
No,
just the
I'm just
Bucks?
gonna stick with the Buccaneers.
Okay, and then finally the NFC West, Laraib. I'll start with this one. At the bottom, it is the Seattle Seahawks at eight
What?
and nine
What?
for me. Look, they were the only team in this division I had under 500 and just by a game. Ultimately, it's I need to see it, Sam. You did it last year, but you're pretty much, and I think you would agree with this as well. From what you had last year in the Vikings, from what you have, you're downgrading at every single position. Offensive play caller going from O'Connell to Kubiak, top receiver from JSN or Justin Jefferson to JSN, and just going down. I guess K9 might be a little bit better than Aaron Jones, but now we're splitting hairs. But offensive line, the defense was better. And I do like Mike McDonald, but he needs to prove to me that he can be a all the time head coach because even the defense last year, yeah, they had some injuries, but just really didn't impress me as much as I would like it to have. They didn't really do well in the draft last year. We'll see this year. A lot of people are high on Gray Zabel. I know you were. And then Nick Emanwari out of South Carolina. I think, good guys with a lot of upside, but need to see it play out. And it sucks because that means I have this team at three, and that's the Arizona Cardinals. And I know you're like, hey, when have they ever done anything? But I don't know. I guess I'm more bullish on Jonathan Gannon in year two, or is this year three? I don't know.
I think
Jonathan
it's year
Gannon,
three.
year three. I really like their defense this year. I don't know. It just, you bring in Josh Sweat to kind of reinforce that defensive line. Um, I like the secondary. You bring in what is it, Will McDonald out of Michigan, who kind of fell in the draft a little bit because of health concerns, but he's looked really good in the preseason. And if you can get a solid pass rush and a lockdown corner, all of a sudden this defense, you can do so many things. My boy Gardecki is fully healthy, and he was a stud for them last year. And then ultimately, this offense is, they were a good offense last year with Kyler at helm. They just they just need consistency out of Kyler. And I feel like I'm running on a treadmill with this take. The idea of Kyler is better than the product of Kyler, but I think with a complementary defense, this can be a respectable team. At two, I do have the Los Angeles Rams. I would love to put them at number one because ultimately, at their ceiling, I think they are one of the best teams in the NFL. But Stafford with the back is just, it's so hard for me to get them there. I had to find a way to put them in the playoffs because I'll be honest with you, if Stafford is banged up all season long, this is not a playoff team. But because just of the thought of how well they played to end the year last year, this defense was so electric, especially on the defensive line. Jared Verse, Brian Brzee, or not Brian Brzee, Brandon Fisk, both the FSU guys who just balled out last year, along with the other two studs that they had the past few drafts. They just really moved me the way they dominated that Vikings team in the playoffs. Um, and then Sean McVay, I just think, is probably the best head coach in the NFL. So it's hard not to put faith in them. But ultimately, Stafford is the straw that stirs the drink. And if he's at his best, this offensive ceiling is off the charts. Devontae Adams gets brought in. I still think he can have a solid season. Puka's aimed for a breakout. Kyron Williams, but it all depends on Stafford and his back. That's why I hesitate putting them at the top of this division. I'll keep them one peg lower. And then at number one, maybe controversial, I have the San Francisco 49ers. I just think Kyle Shanahan's a really good head coach. I like what I saw from Brock Purdy last year. They just had so cluster injuries, and everyone wants to throw them out like they're just a piece of trash. Like, oh, what? 49ers are old news. We're ready to move on. They still have a ton of talent. You lose a lot of defensive talent, but you bring in Robert Saleh, who I thought is a great defensive coordinator. He just brings so much energy to a young defensive team. Michael Williams out of Georgia at edge. I really like their foundational pieces that I think they can build off of. And they have a ridiculously easy schedule this year. When I was going through it, I was like, I cannot have them at 13 wins. I need to find some losses in here. And I gave them a few. But man, I just think if they play to their floor, this is a playoff team. And I have them winning the division.
Well, I think this is gonna be the only division where we disagreed on every single team, Lewis.
Hell
Let me
yeah.
go ahead and start off at the number four spot with the Arizona Cardinals. Like you mentioned, you like the idea of Kyler Murray, but this is year seven, year eight of
7,
him,
yeah.
and it's just the same thing over and over again. You have questions about his motivation to play football. You have questions about, his health from, being banged up so many times earlier in his career. You have question marks about their defense. You said, oh, if they can bring in Will McDonald and, Josh Sweat to help shore up that defense, they can do so many different things. Well, the Seattle Seahawks are already doing that with Julian Love, Tariq Woolen, Devon Witherspoon, Derek Hall, Uchenna Nwosu, Leonard Williams.
Now, bro,
Those
just name the
guys are
names.
already there. So to make that argument, I just want to put you on blast for that dumb shit. Okay. Then at my number three spot, I'm going with the 49ers. They do have
Oh,
they do have the easiest schedule in the entire NFL this year based on everyone's records from last year. But I just think that they're dealing with injuries across the board offensively. Trent Williams, he is going to be banged up for some reason throughout the season. Debo Samuel is gone. Ricky Pearsall is going to be your number one option while Brandon Ayuk comes back from tearing his ACL, his MCL, and his PCL. And then Jawan Jennings dealing with his, hamstring injury from the entire offseason. So offensively, I just think it's going to be too much on Brock Purdy's shoulders. Christian McCaffrey, a whole fiasco from last year. You would be insane to draft him in fantasy this year, I think. Absolutely crazy if you took him. But and then George
ah,
Kittle, George Kittle is the one like solid foundational piece who's gonna be there. Everyone knows his name. He's gonna have those huge
boy.
games throughout the season. And then defensively, I agree. Robert Saleh is a great defensive coach, but when you lose, 10 starters on your defense from last season to this season, Joey Bosa cannot carry this whole thing on his back.
Nick.
Losing Hufanga, losing Dre Greenlaw, losing Leonard Floyd, I think those are going to add up, and that's why I have them at three. At number two is my Seattle Seahawks. They bring in Kubiak and they're going to establish this heavy run first offense, set up that play action for Sam Darnold, set up that deep ball to Torrey Horton. Remember the name, rookie receiver from Colorado State. Mark my words, he is going to be a demon this year. I just think, you're talking about Sam Darnold putting a lot of pressure on his plate. I
Horton
think the
here's a
Seahawks are
who.
going to do the complete opposite. They're going to run the ball with Zach Charbonnet. They're going to run the ball with Kenneth Walker, play defensive football, and then Sam Darnold just hit the throws on the play action bootlegs like he did last year. I know Jefferson, JSN isn't not on that same level
He's
quite
not at
yet,
all.
not yet, but I think he's
Never.
still gonna be
Never.
he's still top 10, and I
Top
think
10?
he
At
can
what?
in receiving the
In
football in the
longest
national
names in the NFL?
in the National Football League. And that means at the number one spot, I do have the Los Angeles Rams. Like you mentioned, Sean McVay, the best coach in the NFL. This team, Lewis, was one or two plays away from going to the NFC Championship. And if they were playing that Commanders team, they're just a couple plays away from going to the Super Bowl, then, in my opinion. Now, winning it, might have been a little difficult task for this Rams team. But I just think the way their defense have played, you had the two young rookies going into their second year, taking that leap. Matthew Stafford, they go out to get Devontae Adams. They're not doing that for no reason. I think they feel like they have that window. It might be just slightly open, but it's still open. They're going to put all their chips on the table. That's what they did when they won their first Super Bowl. That's what it feels like they're doing with Stafford, their first Super Bowl with Stafford. That's what it feels like they're trying to do here, trying to get their second one. I think the Rams win this division.
All right. I mean, I don't like your pessimism on the Niners. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think it's not based, but you know what? I'll be willing to bet maybe a Dave's Hot Chicken on that if you're
Oh,
willing. But we'll discuss that later. We'll see if we cook something up. All right. So just let's recap, Laraib. Go through our 1 through 7s. We'll start in the AFC. I'll go ahead and start. Um, this is the order that I do see the playoffs ending at, right? So I do have the Bills as my 1 seed, the Chiefs, Ravens, and Texans as the division winners. And then I have the Bengals, Broncos, and Patriots rounding out the top 7. My honorable mentions, just missing out. I had both the AFC West teams, the Chargers and the Raiders, barely missing out. And then I guess I'll give a special shout out to Trevor Lawrence and the Jags as frisky in the AFC.
yeah, we only agreed on two such teams, the 4 and the 7 spot. At the number 1 spot, I'm going with the Ravens. Maybe a little sneak peek for our Sunday night game. At the number
Hello.
2 spot, give me the Buffalo Bills. 3, I got the Chiefs. 4, the Texans. 5, the Los Angeles Chargers. They are here this year. Believe that. Justin Herbert will win a playoff game this year. At the
If
6, at the 6th spot, give me the Broncos. And then, yeah, I agree with you at 7. Give me the Patriots. Of course, from the outside looking in, I like the Bengals. I like the Steelers. Don't call me crazy. It's a disgusting pick. It truly is a disgusting pick.
two biggest Rodgers haters on planet Earth right here, by the
It
way.
is a disgusting pick, but I just think their defense is always going to be good.
Yeah,
Just like the
sure.
Ravens.
Mike Tomlin, 9
If
and 8.
if Aaron Rodgers can do anything, can do something. Shout out Pat Fryermuth, and
Shout
DK
out.
Metcalf.
Darnell
You know,
Washington.
he's a big guy.
Big John.
They can be right there, especially if you look at a team like the Patriots and say Drake May doesn't take that leap that we expect him to. We say Bo Nix doesn't take that same leap. If the Chargers, if Justin Herbert gets hurt, then
If
yeah,
I
exactly.
like that hypothetical.
Yeah, and then of course the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, like we mentioned, this is it, buddy. So if he can do something this year, you could see him in the playoffs.
One honorable mention, if there ever is like that big Commanders Broncos leap like we saw last year, I would throw it out to the Tennessee Titans. I don't love their defensive personnel, but with the right defensive mind, you could scheme up things to help you. And just, I think the underrated thing of having a quarterback who you can believe in, because their defense was good at the beginning of the season. I mean, I know you remember that Bears game very well, and it was purely sabotage that ruined that. So if you just have a quarterback who's competent and instills confidence throughout the entire team, we see how it can just transform an entire team. So the Tennessee Titans, sneaky, sneaky at plus 660 to make the playoffs. Kind of like that odds. But any other dark horse, anything like that for you in the AFC?
Um, no, I really think it's those
It's
one or
pretty.
two.
The quarterbacks
Yeah,
are just
the
insane in
one or
this
two teams
conference.
that we kind of put in on the bubble. Besides that, I think it's just really clear cut in the AFC this year.
I agree. Let's move on to the NFC now, Rob. Let's start. I have the 1 through 7, the Eagles, Lions, Niners, and Bucks as the division winners, starting with the Eagles, Lions, Niners, Bucks in that order. And then my wild cards, I have the Packers, Commanders, and then the Rams, with the Cardinals and the Cowboys just missing out.
I agree with you. The Eagles at 1, at 2, I'm putting the Packers, 3, the Rams. We agree the 4 is going to be the Buccaneers, and then 5, give me the Lions. 6, my Seahawks, and then 7, the lowly Commanders taking a step back. A couple teams ahead on the bubble, of course, the 49ers. If Brock Purdy is that guy and he can lead this 49ers team against that crappy schedule that they have, you can easily see them making it. The Cowboys. like we mentioned, just like the Bengals, offensively, they're going to be a powerhouse, but it's just can they win games with how bad their defense is going to be? You can put the Bears and the Vikings in here as well. It's just harder for me to see those teams though. So
Tough.
yeah.
Yeah, and I guess this one's kind of tough to predict a breakout team. You could say maybe the Falcons, but most people are kind of have them projected in that 8-9 win range anyway. So, and I don't want to just throw, oh, well, I think the Giants could make some noise. I don't think so. I don't want to be disingenuous. So maybe the Falcons, if those two rookies can prove to be huge additions. But then, I didn't even talk about an injury to the right tackle, Caleb McGarry, to start the year. I don't know. I just don't believe. Sorry, Atlanta fans. Actually, not.
All right, well, let's move on to who we think is going to win the Super Bowl here. This is going to
Hello.
be
Hello.
this is a lot more difficult to predict than the division winners. But
Hey, let's just start. Who do you have coming out of the each conference?
I'm going to say the Ravens and the Eagles.
Wow, really
I mean,
going out on a limb,
it's
huh?
gonna be chalk, but this is kind of how the way the NFL has been kind of shifting towards. We haven't really seen a team, from that 6 or 7, 4 or 5 spot kind of, make their way to the playoffs and start dominating. We haven't every single year we see fewer and fewer newer teams make it into the playoffs, from years past. I think it was like we would see 3 or 4 teams be constantly changing. But now it's kind of been like, 1 or 2 different teams are going to make it and everyone else is going to stay the same. So we're starting to see a little bit less and less parity. Good thing, bad thing, I don't know just yet for the NFL. But last year who won the Super Bowl, it was the second seed, right? The year before was the Chiefs. They were the 1 seed or the 2 seed. So this is one or
There
two
was a three
seeds.
seed.
I don't care
They went
because
on the
that
road to Buffalo and then on the road to Baltimore.
no, that didn't happen. No, that didn't happen.
They won.
Anyway, it's
They
going to be
won.
one of these 1 or 2 seeds, and so I like the Ravens and the Eagles.
Um, I don't disagree with your premise. I think there's progressions teams go through. You can go from bad team to playoff team. That could be pretty easy. You get a coach change, but going from playoff team to true contender is a gradual jump. You don't just go from bad to contender. But I am predicting a big jump from a team in the NFC. You can say I'm eating the cheese a little bit. The Green Bay Packers as a wild card team, I think they might start the year off a little shaky with some of the changes, but I think once they start getting rolling, the second half of the year is a lot easier. They can really start to roll, build some momentum. And I just think with Micah Parsons, this defense, my biggest question about their defense was just that second, who's that playmaker? Who's gonna, big possession in the fourth quarter, who's going to make that play to really elevate? Because this team is a bunch of B plus type of guys, like you were mentioning earlier. But he is a certified A plus level talent who is a game wrecker, just getting pressures on the quarterback. And I think they can run the ball very well. I like Jordan Love. I think he's going to have a really good season. So I really like the Packers and they're going to face the Buffalo Bills. I just think this is Josh Allen's year. This team is just as good as it's ever been. And as much as I love the Chiefs and they've done a lot for me these past few years, I just think it's so hard to go back to back to back. All the offseason noise. I just think it's a distraction. Now, Taylor Swift psyop, getting the wedding, Amazon money, all this, that might play a factor in why they reached Super Bowl again. It's hard to bet against them. And I know when we get to playoff time next year, I'm going to be sitting there like, am I going to do it? But as it stands right now, I do have the Buffalo Bills slightly lean over the Ravens. I think both these teams are just who's not going to be the bridesmaid this year? Who's finally going to do it? And ultimately, I do have the Bills beating the Packers in the Super Bowl.
And I have the Ravens beating the Eagles in the Super Bowl. I think Lamar Jackson, the roster they've constructed this year, oh man, it is going to be a lot of heated offseason talk if they don't make some big noise this year. I like the Ravens to win.
All right, and then finally, before we get out of here, Laraib, we have our MVP prediction. Um, I just think, the past few years, it's been kind of the same batch of guys. So I'm going to stick that route, Laraib. I think Josh Allen is going to go back-to-back MVPs here. I have them as the best record in the entire NFL. I think he's going to have just another heroic season. And, I just think he has the full season this year that just vaults him into this legendary planet quarterbacks, having him as my number one MVP prediction. At number two, I have Lamar. I just think those two are just so dynamic. And at number three, I do have Jayden Daniels as a third place MVP finisher. I just think he's going to do so much for this Commanders team without the great help that he had. Even last year, this year it doesn't look like much improved, but he's going to take that next step as a floor raising, game changing quarterback that he's going to earn some MVP votes this season.
For MVP, I think you and I both agree it's going to be Lamar or it's going to be Allen. I have the Ravens with the best record this year in the NFL. So I'm going to go and put Lamar one, Allen two. At number
Okay.
three, call me crazy. I'm putting
You're
Joe
crazy.
Shiesty, Joe Burrow.
Mm.
I think
And he's missing the
this
playoffs for
the
you.
season he had last year, if he can have that same performance this year, it would be asinine that he does not win MVP. That's why I think he wins it. Uh, where he
But
comes
you don't
third.
think he makes the playoffs.
No, I don't think he makes the playoffs, but I think he just
So
plays.
why isn't Justin Herbert getting a vote?
Well, Justin Herbert, their team's gonna be running the ball a lot more.
Oh, he's not that valuable. Cinema, pure cinema. I will say dark horses. My dark horse that I have written down at a plus 1600 on FanDuel, Baker Mayfield. I think if the Bucks they have a soft end of their year schedule, and if they have just a respectable beginning of the year and they finish as a top three, maybe as the number one seed in the NFC, which I think is on the board. This division is very weak, and they have a lot of easy games on their schedule. Especially with Wirfs missing time in the beginning of the year, Godwin missing time, McMillan being in and out. You're leaning on a lot of young guys. I think Mayfield, if he can lead this Bucks team to a one seed, I just think that'll do a ton for him, and he'll get a ton of credit. He's already a very well liked quarterback, so I think getting into those media narratives won't be so hard like it has been for him in the past. So I do like Mayfield as like a dark horse MVP.
My dark horse, I don't know if you could say, and he has the sixth best odds, but I'm gonna say
Mm.
Jordan Love. I mean,
Yeah,
MVP isn't you have two qualifications for MVP. You're a quarterback and you're on a good team. So there's not,
yeah,
that many listed guys that you can put
right.
up on here for your dark horse. So I like Jordan Love. If he can, same thing as Baker Mayfield. This is a guy who, a lot of people like. And after a down year, what was supposed to be a huge year for him, coming back from injury, if he can lead the Packers to a one seed, you could easily see him making a case for MVP. A second guy who I have, call me crazy. I like Jalen Hurts to win it. After all the controversy he had from last year, all the tush push and stuff, going to the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl, winning the MVP, then this past offseason, all the drama with Cam Newton, I just think there's half of the people who feel like he's been really disrespected and half the people who feel like he's been really overrated. But this Eagles team, if their defense takes a little bit of a step back, if Hurts is forced to throw the ball a little bit more, I think he could I think he could make a solid case for it. Especially if they have a good shot of winning, being the number one seed. So I think Jalen Hurts, tied at seven best odds with Justin Herbert. I think he's a good candidate too.
Jalen Hurts threw for 2,900 passing yards last year. Just
So
is he gonna
this is a
throw?
year he takes the leap, is what you're
Oh,
telling me.
3,300. Ooh. Look, I like Jalen Hurts. I just think you can't be the most valuable player on that team. It's kind of hard. It's like the Warriors in 2017. Like, how can you say Steph's or KD is the MVP when they're playing with each other? It's not because I think he is a really good quarterback, but the MVP most valuable to your team winning, if that is the case, that means he probably had a huge passing year, which I don't think it's in his arsenal. But that's neither here nor there. All right, well, those are our season predictions for the NFL. We'll be back filming sometime, probably Wednesday night or Thursday for our week one prediction. So make sure you're looking out for that. I know we are thrilled. We'll figure out something to do for our wager at the end of this year for our picks. I know Rob got me last year, but I will be back with a vengeance this year, and can reassert my dominance. But super excited to get into it. It's football season, Rob. I know you were forced to watch college football this weekend. You were probably like, just fast forward the clock already. Even though I
I
thought it was
mean,
really
this
good
Arch
games.
Manning hype has gone out of control already. I mean, I'm telling you right now,
Saints are busting for
yeah,
us,
you're waiting
baby.
for the draft next year. I'm telling you, I'm already calling this guy a bust. The way his arm angles, the way he's trying to throw the football looks horrendous. But well, that's talk from 8 months from now.
This is a guy who needs NFL football back on, and it will be back on Thursday night. We are so excited to break that all down. But Laraib, that'll conclude today's episode. Anything got for us before we leave today?
No, I think this is the First Single Podcast signing off.
Peace.